Welcome to Choose Views with Richard Chew.
Get ready to dive into a world of insightful conversations and thought-provoking discussions.
As progressives, our job is to have an all-inclusive, full-on assault with all of our players.
A show that focuses on moving our political, social, economic, gender, and cultural conversation forward.
And all of our players means all of our players.
It's Choose Views. And now, here's your host, Richard Chew.
Good Wednesday morning, political fighters, and welcome to the July 15th, 2026 edition of Choose Views. 773-763-9278 is the number. Find my show on Facebook Live, TuneIn Radio, and YouTube. And, of course, email me at richard@wcptama20.com. Follow me on all the socials under Choose Views. Catch all of our shows by subscribing to our WCPT podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and iHeartRadio. There you can get Choose Views featured interviews. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez. It's The Democracy Stupid with Edwin Eisendrath. Out Chicago, and our other shows and interviews. Also in the evenings, The Politics Bar, Matt McNeil Show, and The Gailey Show. And by all means, our great folks at heartlandsignal.com. A couple of quick things that are happening there. U.S. Representative Gwen Moore of Democrat of Wisconsin says ICE is working without consent in the Wisconsin government. The government is about the consent of the governed, and we are withdrawing our consent. So there are a number of great articles that are there that you guys want to check out, and make sure you're making your way over. Share, like, and share, as we always say. Let me make sure the phone is off so we don't have all that background noise. You got enough noise going on in the studio with me ruffling papers. Oh, there you go. So there's a couple of great posts about and through Representative Gwen Moore, Democrat of Wisconsin. So make sure you check those out, and like I said, pass them on. I want to give a little bit of a shout out to to the Democrats in the Senate for their blocking of this defense bill. Obviously, the Republicans were trying to ram this through. And so shout out to Chuck Schumer for holding the caucus together and making sure that they did the right thing with this appropriations. If it's not right, it's not right, and we can't we can't allow the Republicans. And this is one of those cases where the Democrats use their numbers to the best of their ability. So shout out to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer for that kind of leadership. All right, so this morning we are going to be busy, as always. We got things happening. We want to hear from you. Make sure you give us a call at 773-763-9278. Got some commentary after the first break on something that took place yesterday that will probably fly under the radar, but not here. Not here. We're going to talk about it. So on today's show, let me share this with you real quickly. Power Pack lineup. Starting at 6:30 with Princeton professor Eddie Glaude. You have seen him on MS Now. He is a James McDonald Distinguished University professor in the Department of African American Studies at Princeton University. Author of several best-selling books, including his most recent one, America, USA: How Race Shadows the Nation's Anniversaries. And we will definitely talk about that. I've got so many questions for Professor Glaude, so I'll try to keep those in line as best we can. In the 7 o'clock hour, Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 will be joining us, as always. And I know he's got a few things to say. He's had some great posts on social media this past week. And then former Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin and 2026 candidate for Wisconsin Governor, Mandela Barnes, will be with us in the 7:30 hour, talking about his race for that office. And that's a governorship that we've got to hold on to. There's a few others that we've got to hold on to in the country, and then some, hopefully one or two that we can pick up. The importance of governor races. I've said this since the beginning of the show. I've said it longer than that, but since the beginning of the show, one of the things that I've leaned into is the importance. We know how much we spend time on the federal races and the federal government and what the federal government does. And never before, since Donald Trump has been back in the White House, has us paying attention to the federal government been important because of the way in which the federal government is trying to hurt the states. They've made that their mission. It's in Project 2025, and it's part of what they've been trying to execute. And they talk out of both sides of their mouths when it comes to the importance of the states. On one hand, the states should deal with, abortion, a woman's right to choose. And on another hand, we want to take the states' rights away when it comes to how we view voting. See, they're back and forth. It's a let's pick what we want it to be about for the states. And when it doesn't suit our will or our goal, then it doesn't really matter as much. But to that end, the governor's races are super important like never before. The states that are holding on, that are being able to buffet some of this madness coming from the White House and the entire administration and cabinet and the GOP is being done by governors in many cases, and certainly attorneys general, secretaries of state. And so with someone like Mandela Barnes running for Wisconsin state governor, we need that type of person, that type of leadership in place so that Republicans don't try to do what they've done. I mean, and this is also where it's important when we talk about state legislatures. The Wisconsin state legislature's goal has been to take the teeth out of what the governor can do in that state. So winning back state house offices is as important as ever before, because what the Republicans want to do is just make themselves or put themselves in a position to block whatever a Democratic governor does. They've had some success at it in Wisconsin. They're going to try it in Minnesota. And they are certainly going to try it in Michigan, which is why we had candidates on from Michigan to talk about what's going on there. And we're going to do our best in every other state that we can. So if I say all that to come to one quick point. If there is a state official, a governor, a lieutenant governor, an AG, a secretary of state, or a state legislators that are running, I don't care if it's in Oregon, I don't care if it's in Alabama, if it's in Texas, wherever in the country that's running, and you listen to this show or you follow this show in any capacity, and you want us to talk to that person, send me an email at richard@wcpt820.com, and we will reach out to that person to get them on the show. If they're running for office as a Democrat and we want to get them, provide them with as much support as possible, you let me know, and I will do my best to make sure that our team works to reach out to that person to get them on, because this is an opportunity for us to take back those state legislatures. Let's do it. Let's do it as a team. So I'm all in on that. Let me know. As I said, we got Professor God, Professor Eddie Glaude, Kurt Mullett, Mandela Barnes will be with us. And today's question of the day, let me get to this real quickly before we take our first break. And with us talking about the state elections, it's important to look at the future. And one of the things that I hear a lot and talk about to some extent is, how we're going to navigate voting. Voting rights right now is even further under attack than it ever has been with the Supreme Court's ruling. It makes it clear that they don't want certain people to vote. It's not about this illegal voting and all that. That's not it at all. It's about making sure that certain people don't vote. So our question of the day is regarding voting. And that is, what are your thoughts and feelings about lowering the voting age to 16 years of age? The 26th Amendment gives the person that's of 18 years of age the right to vote. But there are many people that are saying that, we need to have younger people involved in politics and more younger people involved in what we're doing in the country. And I dare say that irrespective of what some people say is too young or they don't know enough, I think that we've set a number that may be to our disadvantage as a country in terms of participation of younger folks. If we want younger folks involved in politics and have younger voices involved in what's going on, then why don't we look at changing something that's become kind of an institutional block? I mean, I know a bunch of 16-year-olds that are pretty doggone sharper than some 28-year-olds. Henry, you probably do too. Mike, I'm sure you got some folks in your world that are 16 years old, 17 years old, and they know what they're doing. They've got a plan. when you got some folks that are 27 that they're like, right? So why don't we consider that? Because, or I want to hear what you guys have to say. I'll tell you where I am as we go along the show today, but I'll give you kind of a hint. I wouldn't have asked this question if I didn't think it's something that we should consider. What I want to hear from you guys in terms of your thoughts and feelings about lowering the voting age to 16 years of age. Let us know by sending us a text or giving us a call at 773-763-9278. You can also text that number. And leave your comments on our Facebook page. Let us know what your thoughts are in that space, and we'll try to get them on today. Let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278, and you are listening to WCPT AM 820 in Chicago. Choose Views on WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to the show. If you're just tuning in, it's Choose Views, and I'm Richard Chu. On this July 15th, 2026, how about a couple of quick Choose Views news items? New York is halting new data center construction for a year. They became the first state to bar new data center construction. The one-year moratorium applies to data centers using 50 megawatts of power or more. It's meant to buy state officials time to create a set of consistent, quote, standards for the new facilities, plus explore the possible environmental impacts. As more data centers go up across the country, the communities around them have been debating the potential consequences such as higher electricity bills, as we all know. New York has about 130 currently, while hotspots, Virginia and Texas, host more than 500 each. The Consumer Price Index falls for the first time in 6 years. Prices notched their biggest monthly drop in more than 6 years last month, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics release of data yesterday. It slid 0.4% in June after rising about the same amount a month earlier. On a yearly basis, prices rose about 3.5%. That's less than the 3.8% analysts had expected. Energy prices fell for the first time since the conflict in Iran began in late February. The 5.7% drop proved to be the largest contributor to the monthly all items decrease, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's going to change next month because of how we're back at it again. The Fed's Kevin Warsh, reiterated the central bank's commitment to controlling inflation during the congressional testimony yesterday, maintaining the agency has no tolerance for it. His comments come on the heels of a June decline in consumer prices, as we just said. While expressing optimism about the economy, Warsh noted the AI boom poses potential challenges. He also declined to provide his take on where rates are headed in the near term. The World Cup travel ticks back up ahead again with the semifinals having taken place. FIFA's Dream World Cup semifinals, featuring the consensus 4 best teams in the world, have turned out to be a boon for the host cities Dallas and Atlanta, according to CNBC. Big spenders who had held off on booking until they were certain that their teams had made it through are now reserving their last-minute flights for now the finals that are going to be upon us. The finals are July 19th in New Jersey. Last but not least, Warren Buffett is once again giving away a big part of his wealth, $6 billion of his Berkshire Hathaway stock, putting him on track to give away his entire stake in the company within the next 8 years. The 95-year-old investor on Tuesday announced that 4 charitable organizations helmed by his 3 children will receive about $6 billion worth of shares in the company, where he still serves as chairman. The Gates Foundation, which for 2 decades was the largest recipient of Buffett's Berkshire stock, is no longer a donee. So there you go, guys. A couple of quick Choose Views news items on this Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. Okay. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to David Hochberg, Vice President of Lending for Team Hochberg, Spencer Critchley, author of Patriots of Two Nations. And that's live, local, and progressive. Weekdays 2 to 5 here on WCPT, AM, and, of course, the heartlandsignal.com website and tune in. Driving it home tonight, Patty will be joined by guest co-host Ken Mejia Beal, and their guests are Heartland Signal Executive Director Rodney Gibbs, Zach Breckman, 2026 Democratic candidate for Kendall County Clerk and Recorder, Ellie Krug, transgender activist, lawyer, and host of The Illegal Trans Woman on KTNF in Minnesota. Todd Northcutt, Vice President of Public Relations for the Peoria Pride Parade that's taking place this weekend. Driving it home with Patty Vasquez weekdays, 5 to 7 here on WCPT, the Heartland Signal website, TuneIn, YouTube, and Facebook. Tomorrow on Choose Views, we'll be joined by Peggy Flanagan, Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota and candidate for U.S. Senate in Minnesota, Alexandra Natapoff, who is one of the Harvard Law professors and authors of the brand new book, America Unfinished, 250 Years of Law and Governance. Qasim Rashid will also be joining us, author and activist and human rights lawyer and host of and creator of Let's Address This on Substack. So there you go. That's what's happening. We'll keep you posted. We'll give you another quick reminder as we go through the show today. All right. When I said earlier there was a thing that, the folks that might want to keep this under the radar for certain reasons are going to try to keep it under the radar. But I'll speak to it in the broader sense, and then it'll tie in a little bit to when we talk with Professor Eddie Glaude. What is it? Okay. E. Jean Carroll collected her $5.6 million from sexual predator Donald Trump. And we can use those words now because the determination by the judge is that he did, based on the ruling, commit and was liable for sexual assault. Okay? She still owed $83.3 million for the defamation suit against Trump. But I didn't want it to fly under the radar because a lot of the folks in the MAGA world they process that everything that Donald does is correct and right and honorable, and he should receive no criticism. But a judge said, based on a jury of his peers, that Donald Trump was guilty of sexual assault. He was found liable for sexual assault. And a judge made it clear that the money, the court ordered Donald to pay. He stalled and stalled. The money was put in escrow. And she's actually going to get Henry $5.6 million. The award was originally $5 million. She's getting that additional $600,000 because of the interest that accumulated due to the fact that Donald stalled and didn't want to pay. Okay, so the reason I want to talk about this for a little bit is, guys, keep your hands off the ladies. I've said this before. If you don't have a welcome invitation, and guys, keep your hands off of guys too. If you don't have a welcome invitation, it's for me. Stay away. Let's be right about that. But I also want to talk about this in the context of, there were people. This was something that there were some political lines drawn where people were saying it was an old case, and how could we go back this far? And what, the standard stuff that comes from the people that defend sexual assaulters. And as why didn't the person say something earlier? Who do we know to verify this, et cetera, et cetera? But a jury of peers, as the phrase goes, of one's peers, said, no, the evidence backs it up. And I would say equally important, it showed us that this was a person that that some people gave too much favor to. And that's an easy way for me to say this, or a light way for me to say this. But in fact, guys, in the second election of Donald Trump, we sometimes, because we get so caught up in all the things that we are running toward and trying to solve, I won't say we forget, but it gets put on the back burner, that a certain number of people decided that it was okay to elect a person that even though they met the presidential qualifications, which are limited, must be 35 years of age, must be a natural-born citizen, and have lived in the U.S. for at least 14 years. But there are no rules in the Constitution that prevent a convicted felon from running for or serving as president. Bless you. There are no rules in the Constitution that prevent that. And I say that there should be. If it's a convicted felon, I think that we should add that bullet point to the qualifications. You cannot be a convicted felon. And Donald Trump had this. This is the part that America just sort of is kind of lost sight of, with all the things that are going on with the war and tariffs and all the other crazy things that have happened since he was back in office a year and a half ago. That 78 million people said it was okay to allow for a convicted felon, 34-time adjudicated, and then a twice adjudicated rapist, which now he is found liable for sexual assault. That the country sat back, 78 million people, and however many people that didn't vote because they didn't believe that they could, they didn't have the strength to stand up and say, I have to block this guy from getting in office. That's how I look at it now. A convicted felon. So, what's the fix? The practical fix is for people to stop lying to themselves. The evidence was there. The information was there. We know what we know. We saw what we saw. We read what we read, and we watched what we watched. Donald Trump was a 34-time convicted felon, and people decided to vote for him again to put him back in the White House. And at that time, a twice adjudicated rapist with regard to E. Jean Carroll. And 78 million people who voted, and all the ones that sat on the sidelines, could not see enough in themselves to say, maybe this isn't a good choice. So I wonder how many of those people are actually struggling and going through some stuff right now because of the tariffs and the big ugly bill and healthcare subsidies and now this war in Iran, and who knows what's next before the midterms, let alone. How many people, Henry, who sat back and didn't vote might have their right to vote taken away from them before the midterms for some crazy reason? Okay? So I say this oftentimes. We can blame Trump. We can be upset, and we have to be. Hold all the Republicans to account. And I know there's some people that are going to probably light me up on social media that say I'm blaming the voters. Well, if you set your behind at home, then I get to blame you. Or I get to at least take blame out of it. I get to ask you why not. At least I get to ask that. We all get to ask that question. Why didn't you vote? Knowing what you know. You could have helped block this dude from getting back in again. And now, without opinion but data, has made the country hotter and more expensive. He uses the country's hot right now. Yeah, it's hot. It's hot out of stress, not out of, our beauty and our joy and our, celebrating 250 years. So, guys, I'm a little preachy about this because I did not want that this verdict to go and this payout to Eugene Carroll to go, by lightly. She got paid and she should have, and she deserves more based on what the evidence has shown. And hopefully our court systems will allow that to happen. But let's stop electing unqualified people who have been convicted of many crimes, and one of them being this. Let's take a quick break, guys. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago, WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back, we'll be talking with Professor Eddie Glaude. We'll be right back.
There's this sense, right, that whiteness, right, is under threat. The demographic shifts. The country isn't what all of these racially ambiguous children on Cheerios commercials are confusing the hell out of me. Right?
Eddie, a lot of people voted because their life's too damn expensive, and it was here, and it.
They voted for. You're telling me, Stephanie, that all of these people who believe that their lives are, that bread is too high and eggs are too high, that they voted for a convicted felon. A guy who said we can grab the pea.
I think that a lot
They
of people,
voted for this guy.
I'm not defending it, but I think there are tons of people that don't pay attention to, and I'm not defending it, don't pay attention to politics at all. But while we live in the most prosperous country in the world, people are saying life's not fair, I'm not doing well, my son's still living in the basement, I can't seem to get a job, I don't like the status quo, I'm voting for something else, and
I love you to life.
I love you,
but I do not believe that. I cannot believe that. And the reason I think you believe it is because you don't want to believe that that's what's really motivating them. It's always the case. People don't want to believe what the country actually is, because if they believe it, they're going to have to confront what's in them. I don't believe that. They voted for a crook, a person who they know is stealing from, just doing everything to undermine the so-called country that they love. And then they're telling us the BS that it's economics. We know that's not true.
I don't know how to introduce it other than to introduce it. That is none other than Professor Eddie Glaude. Good morning, sir, and welcome to Choose Views.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. I wanted to drop that one on you to see if it take you back in the time machine a little bit. That every time I listened to that, when I first heard it, I saved it. I sent it to the guys here. We had it on the show, and every now and again, I listened to that to remind myself of obviously those powerful words that you shared on what was at the time MSNBC and Stephanie Ruhl's show. But the importance of helping the country remember, particularly on the anniversary that we just celebrated, last week. We need to reel back sometimes and understand what actually happened in the 2024 election. So I just wanted to say live, thank you for those words. They resonate with me, and they're powerful. And it's the truth. People don't want to tap into that, because if they do, as you said, then they've got to deal with the reality in themselves that that's what we actually did, or that's what they actually did. So welcome to the show. You got the baton.
That was a surprise. Yeah, no, I think we have to really kind of confront the reality that, we're in this current state because large numbers of white Americans just refuse to elect a black woman as the president of the United States. And we're going to have to address that ugliness, particularly in the 250th year of the country, right? My goodness.
Well, given the fact that we just had, and one of the things that I want to share with you guys is Professor Glaude is known and noted for best-selling books. He is the chair or distinguished university professor at Princeton, and African-American studies. But also, one of the things that I think is one of his superpowers is common sense. As educated as he is, with multiple degrees, Morehouse man, Princeton, Temple, he hits a lot of this with just common sense. Like, the light is red, don't go through the intersection kind of common sense stuff. So, Professor Glaude, talk to us a little bit about that in you, but also in where we are as a country. We've got 250 years behind us, if we want to look at it that way. But we keep stepping on our foot when it comes to progress. And I say it in my way, you say it sometimes a little bit more blatantly. It starts with racism, no matter how much the country wants to get away from it. It just does. And I put together a list. I'll let you respond to that. And I'm going to share a list of things that are not in place because of racism. But talk to us about history and where you see us not using common sense.
Well, I think at the heart of the American project, as I write in America USA, is that the double consciousness that Du Bois attributed to us, that we see ourselves through the eyes of those who despise us, is actually a consequence of the double consciousness of the nation, that America suffers from a kind of divided soul, that it imagines itself at once as a beacon of freedom and as a white republic. And you can't hold those two things together without contradiction, without depositing a kind of madness at the heart of the country. And this is from the very beginning. Right. So you see in the founding documents, in the Constitution, the 3/5 Compromise, the Fugitive Slave Clause, and the like. You see it in the refusal to abolish the transatlantic slave trade, and the way in which race shadows how we conceive of American democracy and American freedom in so many ways. And so I think as long as so many folk in this country believe that America is their possession, that freedom is their possession to give and to take away, we will find ourselves in these cycles of madness. And I think what is required, Doc, is a kind of honesty with regards to that. And this is the challenge. because we believe so many people believe the myth that this is somehow the Redeemer Nation, that we have this special mission, that America is exceptional. There is a refusal to kind of confront the ugliness that's at the heart of who we are. And so I take it as my work to bear witness, to tell the truth as best as I can out of a spirit of love, right?
Yeah.
And that's the challenge, right? Because sometimes the rage often tries to overwhelm everything, it seems to me.
It does. And this is the conversation that as Americans, and I'll say Americans first, and then go to being men that happen to be Black or of African heritage. It's a conversation that has to be had. And you there's another great piece of yours where you talk about one of the things that being Black forces you to do is leave your Blackness, and I'm paraphrasing, at the door when you walk into certain environments. It forces you to not acknowledge who you are, not acknowledging who we are when we are in certain company. And that's another one of the things that hasn't changed in our country. Talk to us about that, Professor.
Yeah, it comes from an essay that James Baldwin wrote as a young man entitled Many Thousands Gone. He says, we have to wash our face blank in order to wash away your guilt. That we have, in so many ways, to paraphrase it, we have to leave the particularity of who we are at the door as precondition for our entree into certain rooms. Because, if we come with the fullness of who we are, that doesn't mean stereotypical Blackness, right? You don't have to be loud and all of these things, but just to bring the fullness of who we are into a room, right? Oftentimes, folks get uncomfortable. You're too confident. You're too arrogant. You're too angry. You're too this. You're too that. So we have to, in so many ways, mask, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting on so many different levels because we're constantly code switching. We're constantly trying to navigate these spaces so that we don't trigger white fear, as the historian Carol Anderson talked about, because white fear, of course, is tied to a kind of rage that we know intimately is dangerous and can generate unimaginable harm. So I think it's a part of this place, man, where race shadows our steps at every turn, and we can't, in this current moment, we can't say that out loud without folks thinking that we're victim, we're claiming the status of victimhood, or we're engaged in reverse racism. So to tell the truth about our current days somehow gets turned back on us.
Yeah, and I'll cite a couple things, and this may take us past the break, but I just have to list these are some things that racism is preventing white America from benefiting from. Just hear this out. Healthcare, fair wages, national security, infrastructure, environment, and education. Those 6 things, and there are many more, I'm sure, but those are the 6 that come to mind because they're national issues that impact every single person in the country. But the reason that we're not, in my assessment, in a better place in those categories is because of racism. And if we look at history, Thom Hartmann, he hosts the Thom Hartmann Show and has written a number of books. He talks about the reason that white Americans don't have good health care is because historically, the country did not want to provide health care that would extend to Black folks. So we don't have health care today for everybody in a cogent way because of racism. The same is with wages. That's the reason we don't. National security, because of racism. Infrastructure. We can't let those communities down there have nice streets. So then all the bills none of them get through in a manner that's beneficial. The environment. I mean, we all breathe the same air. And education. Those are my 6. What are your thoughts, Professor?
Right. No, I think this is a really important point. I would urge your listeners to go out and get Heather McGhee's important book entitled The Sum of Us. And she uses the example of public swimming pools to make your point. She was talking about this period in the context of the early 20th century, mid 20th century, when you had a lot of white immigration from Europe and people were in their ethnic enclaves speaking their own individual languages. So you had urban planners who thought, well, maybe if we build these huge pools, people would come out of their ethnic enclaves and we can have a spirit of community. So you get these huge pools public pools built in cities like Chicago and in Jackson, Mississippi and the like, but they were segregated.
Yeah.
And our people were drowning in creeks in the South because we weren't allowed to swim in public pools. And so when we started demanding the desegregation of pools, what did they do? They emptied the pools of water. They filled them with concrete. They denied themselves access to the public swimming pools. And now we got private swimming clubs, which is based on class, as it were. So you see, here we have an example of a public good denied to the community as such because you want to deny it to Black people in particular.
And that is where and why people say, well, can't we just get past racism? And I say, well, sure we can. If people acknowledge that so many of the systems in our country that are broken because of racism. And I mean, it's not rocket science necessarily. No disrespect to our wonderful rocket scientists out there, but you know, for me, I think it's not really complicated. It is kind of a common sense thing. You get past it first. The old adage: "You show me yours, I'll show you mine." You stop, and I'll stop. And
exactly, Doc.
But it takes acknowledgement, and I'm not a professor, but I think I'm blessed with the common sense that my parents gave me and all the education that I have received. And one thing that I recognize over time, Professor Glaude, is for a problem to be fixed and then to move forward from it, you have to acknowledge that it exists, and you have to go to the core. You have to cut down, not to the muscle, but you got to cut through all the fat to acknowledge that it exists. And once you do, it is so. It's actually for so many people, I think for America, white Americans particularly, to acknowledge it wholly, not in part or kinda or with small words, but with big words, that it would actually reduce a lot of stress and PTSD for white Americans. What are your thoughts?
Oh, that is so true. And, you know, I use the example when I'm speaking around the country. You know, you have problems with your marriage and you want to save your marriage, but you know there's a lie at the heart of it. Mm-hmm. At the heart of the problem, but you refuse to address the lie. Mm-hmm. But yet you say you want to save it, but you won't address the lie. So we know we have to tell ourselves the truth. We know we have to, in so many ways, I think, release us into a different way of being together. But that's going to require an honest confrontation. But it can't be a confrontation, Doc, that is, how can I put it, sentimental. Right. So oftentimes people think of racial justice or racial equality as a sentimental enterprise, as a philanthropic gesture.
I'm going to do something for you by.
There you go.
I'm going to do you right by helping you. No, you got to feel better first. You got to do the work. You have to make the acknowledgement. And that's true in any dysfunctional relationship, frankly. Daddy taught me this a long time ago, Professor. He said, say sorry first. Say sorry first and mean it. But at least give the person that you're engaged with the respect that you may have been wrong or partly wrong in the process. And if you can do that, you save yourself a lot of time. And I try that my hardest. I don't always get it there. I'm going to apologize right now because we got to get to a break. Oh, Lord, I knew this was going to be good. I knew I could talk to this man every single day. Professor Eddie Glaude is with us. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, as well as our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and we are talking with Professor Eddie Glaude. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views, 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chu, if you're just tuning in. Professor Eddie Glaude, Jr. is a James McDonald Distinguished University Professor at Harvard. I'm sorry, don't get upset. At Princeton University. I'm sure that happens a lot at Princeton University. But Professor Glaude, one of the things that when I think about your latest work, America, USA, our 250th anniversary or celebration, is your opening sentence in the book. I do not love America and never have, especially now. Criticisms left and right, top and bottom of that statement, but take us through a little bit of why that statement is so meaningful in the book, but also in the larger context of where we are as a country right now.
Right. So, yeah, I've gotten a lot of heat for that sentence. You know, Elon Musk said, if you don't love America, you're a traitor. You should be exiled. Can you imagine?
Someone that wasn't born here.
Exactly.
Don't get
I'm
me
from
started.
Mississippi.
Yeah.
I'm from Mississippi. And so I wanted to make a certain kind of claim. Well, one is that I wanted to hold off the idolatry of the state. We don't love abstractions. We love people close to the ground. And there are a lot of folk who wrap themselves up in the flag, who say that they love the country, but they embrace policies that seem to suggest that they have no love for everyday ordinary people. So I want to reject the idolatry of the state. That's the first thing. The second thing I wanted to do is to turn my attention to people close to the ground, right? That we love folk right in front of us, communities, people. And then I wanted to talk about wound, right? And here I'm announcing also, Doc, that I'm beginning in a different place than James Baldwin. Baldwin says, I love my country. For that reason, I reserve the right to criticize it perpetually.
Yep.
Well, I don't begin there. I begin with wound. My dad was the second African-American hired at the post office in Pascagoula, Mississippi. That's high cotton back in the day.
I know where
Right.
it is.
Right. So we lived in Moss Point. He moved us from one side of town to the other. And as I was playing with my Tonka truck with my new white friend, because we were the third black family who moved into this neighborhood, his dad came out and said, stop playing with that N-word. And I grabbed my Tonka truck and I walked inside because America had just told me what it thought of me. And then my parents had to get to work to teach me how to survive that place. And so I wanted to foreground that, right? And not begin with kind of Pollyannish claims about fidelity or love to the country. I wanted to build on that notion. So what I was trying to do is to change the preposition to a conjunction. Instead of love of country, I wanted to think about love and country, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean to love as we work to build the country we want?
Because if we don't do that, it's obvious by where we are, we keep repeating the same mistake. And that's kind of where I go back to what I was saying about getting to the core of what it is that's causing. Because actually, the liberation that comes from that is, and I hope everybody can take this on as best possible, the liberation that comes from getting to the core is so, you learn so much about yourself, about those around you, et cetera. And by doing that, you actually come out better, and better in the sense that you feel a sense of I can do something about solving problems or this problem, and moving forward and bringing some people with you because you've gone into the cauldron. My sister used to tell me this. She told me this years ago, and she reminds me every now and again. My big sister would say, when you're in the valley, take off your glasses and look around and pay attention, because that's where all the good stuff is. All the things that have fallen into that hole, into that valley. There's so much to learn down there. And as you come out, pay attention, because those are the things that are going to strengthen you as you come out. I think our country is in the valley right now. The challenge is on a lot of levels. I mean, I'm a numbers guy and I'm all the rest, but we're in the valley in so many silos. But we're not acknowledging that because we have a president that says, hey, everything's great. We're hot. We're this, we're that. And people are buying into it because they haven't themselves gone into the valley. They haven't gone to the core to say, what is really wrong here? And if I do that, when I come out from that, I probably will be a little bit better off. What do you think?
I think there's this toxic combination of greed, of selfishness, and hatred that is really choking the life out of the country. And, when we tell ourselves a story about the nation over its 250 years, we know that combination has been present from the beginning. America was a corporation before it was a country. And we know that the kind of unrelenting pursuit of profit has led to a disposition and orientation of extraction, of believing that people are disposable, of kind of divesting from the notion of the public good. We know that we're so selfish that, a million plus people are dead because of COVID. And we have yet to grieve properly, I believe. I think our politics is actually a reflection of the grief that has been unaddressed. But we were debating about wearing masks because we were so selfish that we weren't concerned about our fellows. And then you combine that with the idea that the reason why you're losing ground is because of Black people, because of immigrants, because of folk who are different from you. Right? When you think about those three things, greed, selfishness, and hatred, it lets us know that the crisis we're facing as a country cuts beyond policy. It's a deep moral crisis, right? And unless we get at the heart of whether or not we can actually be the people, the kinds of people that democracies require, are we the people that democracies require, then we stand on the precipice of losing this fragile experiment, it seems to me, precisely because of greed, selfishness, and hatred.
Without a doubt. So I want to ask you this question, and I sometimes I point fingers, but not in a way that's to be harmful. Again, go back to one of those parental lessons about you point one, you got three coming back at you. You've heard that. Our families are both from Mississippi, so it may have its origin may be somewhere in the pine trees of Mississippi. But that being said, Professor. 78 million folks decided that a 34-time convicted felon and all of his folk were the right choice, and they couldn't vote for a Black Asian woman to lead this country. And so here we are. But I have to ask a question from the perspective of, where we go and how we go forward. Is there a way forward? That's not meant to be a rhetorical question or one without a need for an answer, but is there a way forward? And what do you think are some of the basic things that you can leave our audience with to start doing right now?
Well, I think, one of the things I should say, just because you run your mouth for a living doesn't mean you have the answers. Mm-hmm. I'm struggling in this mess just like everybody else. Me too. And, I think part of what we've been saying this morning is that, we have to be honest. We have to tell ourselves the truth. We have to begin to think of policies, right? Embrace policies that will address the fundamental contradictions in this country. We know that oligarchs have seized control of government. We know that fascists have undermined the very foundations of American democracy. So what would it take for us to address the fact that big money has captured government and fascists, white nationalists have seized government? That means we're going to have to address those fundamental commitments that have confounded American democracy. So we're going to have to vote at extraordinary levels, right, in order to get the fascists out of office. And then we're going to have to push the Democratic Party to understand. Now, this is going to get me in a little trouble. We're going to have to push the Democratic Party to understand that its legacy of triangulation, its attempts to be Republican light, has contributed to the moment.
Yes, it has.
We need policies. We need policies that will address across the board, right, working people who are Black, brown, yellow, white, green, working people who have been busting their behinds to make ends meet. And by virtue of that orientation, we can then redirect the country in certain sorts of ways. But it requires first, I think, as we said earlier, a recognition, an acknowledgement that racism has choked the life out of this country from the beginning. It's the ghost that haunts, that has us by the nape of the neck.
Yeah, it's and I appreciate that, because one of the things that I don't do, but I do is I criticize our Democratic Party in hopefully an instructional, let's move forward way. And even the Democratic Party has to acknowledge that it's played a part. And who is the party? The party is the voters as well as the people that are elected. It's not just the elected officials. It's all of those who have sat on the sidelines as Democratic voters, et cetera. But to that end, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of a send-off. Professor Gard, you have an open invitation to be on my show anytime. I have such respect for what you've done, and that piece gets me choked up every time I listen to it. But I do that for a reason, is to remind me of what we're fighting for. So thank you so much for taking time to hang out with us this morning. How can folks find us real quick as we wrap up?
Oh, thank you. Just take a look at my Substack, A Native Son. I would love for you to join and become a part of our community. Or you can find me on X or Instagram or Threads.
Sounds good. Professor. Or Blue Sky. Yeah, there you go. Can't forget that one. Professor Eddie Glaude, thank you for being with us this morning. Have a great rest of the week, and I look forward to us doing this again soon sometime, okay?
You take care, Doc. Appreciate you so much.
You too. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. 773-763-9278 is the number. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you're just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu. Thanks for being with us. Today on Live, Local, and Progressive, Joan Esposito will be talking to David Hochberg, as I said earlier, Spencer Critchley, and then tonight on Driving It Home, Patty Vasquez will be joined by her co-host, Ken Mejia Beal, and they'll be talking to Executive Director of Heartland Signal, Rodney Gibbs, Zach Brockman, Ellie Krug, Todd Northcutt, I should say. That's Patty Vasquez, weekdays 5 to 7 here on WCPT. But right now, good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63 is hanging out with us. Good morning, Kurt. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Richard. Thanks for having me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Absolutely. I hope you're doing well. You got a big smile on your face, so that makes me happy to see you smiling.
It's harder every day, brother, but that's what we got to do. Keep smiling.
We keep smiling. Keep moving forward.
Smiling.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if you
Absolutely.
had a chance to hear any of the conversation with Professor Eddie Glaude, but there's so much to talk to him about. Everything from, the 2016 election to the 2020 election and 2024 election and, statements that he made during those times and so forth. But at the end of the day, the fight that he puts forward is something that I will lean into every single day because he's out there fighting where a lot of people are sitting behind their keyboards and yapping away. So,
yeah, and I've got to hand it to you to be able to adjust how you go from Professor Eddie to, Kurt from Indiana.
Because
it's great the way you can pivot, brother.
Well, let me tell you something. Thank you for saying that, but I will tell you that Professor Glaude would say that is our responsibility as brethren right now. We have to be able to embrace all of us. And he said it briefly in what he said, but we have to be able to embrace all of us. And I think that's where you and I have come together. Hey, man, let's talk about something. The topics of the day, the elephants in the room, all those fancy dancy phrases, but good Lord, we got to do what we got to do, man, to get Dr.
It's crazy.
We got to get Dr. Annie Andrews elected down in South Carolina. We just do. I mean, you and I are going to catch different criticisms from different people about how we handle what we say about Lindsey Graham. Lindsey, I think one of the best statements that was made is by Joe Biden, by Hunter Biden's, in his comments where he said, I'm going to try to remember the guy before he changed to be this Trump acolyte. That's not how Hunter put it, but that was trying to give the favor to a father, favor to a former friend of his father's. But at the same time, acknowledging the fact that this dude turned on us and Lindsey turned hard and in a way that his voting record is more important to me than, frankly, how he died. Because that's the legacy that's going to be there.
His voting record.
And the things that he stood in the way of.
The things he said.
Yeah. Go for it, man. Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you like that.
Against. No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. But, just his voting record, the things he stood for and how he completely did. But they all have. So that's the thing we have to keep in mind. Every single one of these people, Rubio, Cruz, Lindsey, all of these people, even Mitch McConnell, at one point in time had nothing, J.D. Vance, the list goes down, had nothing but negative things to say about Trump. They knew who he was. They talked about him. They called him a Nazi. They called him a psychopathic liar. They called him, all kinds of names. Okay. And once they saw that he was going to be the face of the party, they completely did a 180 and are staying there and will be with him until they, no longer are on this earth. So, I made a post. I wasn't negative about, I shared my feelings and was attacked immensely. So what I decided to do is I went and found Trump's tweet on when Robert Mueller died, and I crossed out Robert Mueller's name and I put Lindsey Graham above it. I put a red line across Robert Mueller and put Lindsey Graham and then reposted it because they the people on the right have a short memory. Okay. They don't remember, or
I think they do remember, but no. I think they do. I know what you're trying to say, and I appreciate you trying to bend yourself into a pretzel, which you rarely do. But they know damn well they know what was said. They don't forget. They just what is it? There's a psychological name for it. Cognitive dissonance. That's what it is. I couldn't think of it. That's what's going on. They just decide, you know what? I'm not going to talk. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to talk about it. They turn into little children and go, no. I'm not listening to you. It's like, that's what happens, Kurt, because they know what he said.
Yeah,
they know what he said, and what the other part, or the ride along. I shouldn't say the other part. The ride along with that is when you ask someone that's in the tank, the MAGA tank or the GOP tank, what do you think about blah, blah, blah that so-and-so said? And say it's Trump. And they say, well, I haven't seen that yet, or I haven't heard it. I'm like, stop lying. You heard it. One of your staffers rushed in and said, this is out there. Prepare yourself because you know you're going to get answered questions when you're walking down the congressional hallway. So in the sense with people who don't remember what Trump said about Robert Mueller or what he said about Rob Reiner and that tragedy.
Anybody, Rob Reiner,
the list goes on. They know what he said. McCain.
The list goes on and on. He said some of the most hateful things when people have passed away, Democrats. So,
even Republicans. When John, listen,
even Republicans. You're right. John McCain.
The thing that I think Republicans who say they're Republicans should have. This is why what Professor Glaude says about racism is at the tip of all this. At the end of the day, you said it in your way too. But let me come back to this. Republicans that call themselves, quote, true Republicans, not the hardcore crazy ones that we know are out there, but the ones that would maybe say that they're more moderate. People forget about something that Donald Trump said in this context of going after people in his own party that I think should have discounted him a long time ago. And it was a simple statement, but it wasn't. It was one that sometimes gets missed. And that's when he went after John McCain and said that basically, real heroes don't, when he got captured, making the statement that, that to me, if I'm a real Republican and I'm military, active duty or former military, I'm like, why would I vote for this dude? Because John McCain, by our standards in the country, right or wrong, was a war hero. Now, he shouldn't have been flying where he was flying. The data backs that up. But at the end of the day, he did not cave in on the people that would have caved in so that people that would have been put in further harm. That, to me, showed his ability to be the label of a war hero. And Trump went
coming from a guy who had 5 deferments from the Vietnam War and then went on Howard Stern and said that fighting VD, venereal disease, was his own private Vietnam. I mean, this guy, he has been the worst advocate for veterans in the military in our country, and I don't care what anybody says. They can throw it whatever they want to. This guy has done more harm to veterans in this country, and yet on January 6th, they lined up to go to battle for him, because there was a lot of veterans there. So
that's true.
They still are to this day.
That's sometimes the heartbreaking part about January 6th is who was actually there, not so much that it happened, but who was actually there. So we shift from one Republican that's passed away, and we got to win that seat. We got to get Dr. Annie Andrews in. We need to disband ourselves from the purity test of whatever. We need to win that seat, and I think she's good for it. And it was great to interview her yesterday. Kurt, let me ask you this question, and I know you don't know, but what are your thoughts before we go to this first break? About Mitch McConnell, that whole situation. Not so much his health, because if he's sick and unhealthy, and then do the right thing, family. That's where I come from, and I know you and I come from the same place in that regard. But my concern is like what Governor Beshear's armed with to be able to do the right political thing. Your thoughts, real quickly.
Well, yeah, I made a post about that too, is that I'm calling Andy Beshear to come to the forefront. He needs to step up. He needs to demand a one-on-one meeting with Mitch McConnell. He needs to have verification. And if he's not going to do it, somebody needs to do this. somebody in Congress needs to step up, because what they are doing, they're delaying this because there's an August 3rd deadline for a special election to be held. And they're trying to get past that point. Look, it came out, the first thing that came out was that he was brain dead.
Yeah.
Let's not forget that, okay? Now, I know miracles happen, but I don't know how many people come back from being brain dead. I mean, I don't know. I'm not, you know,
but
history
didn't line up on that one.
Yeah. I mean, but so, you know, the way I look at it is that we have 2 dead Republicans that need their seats filled, and one of them they couldn't hide, and the other one they're hiding.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I saw your post, and I agree with what you said, Governor Beshear. This is one of those moments. I know you got to get all the legal boxes checked and so forth. I get that, but you're the executive of the state, of the entire state, not the Democratic Party, of the entire state, and technically the Senate is under the jurisdiction in terms of filling the seat of the governor in that state. So, or at least,
hey, I'd like to make a visit to him. I'd like to see how he's doing. I'd like to talk to him and make sure that he's doing okay, and if there's anything that I can do for him.
It's actually a good strategy to say, you know, I want to go check on him. He is a U.S. senator from our state. So let's take a quick break. 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, as well as our good friends at AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63. We'll be right back. Guys, welcome back to Choose Views. If you were just tuning in, I'm Richard Chu, and we're talking with our good friend Kurt Mullett from Hoosier Blue 63. Got to check out the work that Kurt does. I mean, seriously, Substack, his post, all the good stuff. And like and share, because it's good stuff, and you should be doing that. Kurt, what are your thoughts about this upcoming press conference that Trump said he's going to have, I guess, tomorrow? And some people are speculating that it's going to has something to do with the 2020 results of the Georgia election. What are your thoughts there? And you've probably seen a variety of things. Go for it.
Well, it's really big, really big news. It's big news. It's there's really going to be something big that it's going to be great. It's really big news. So give me a break. This guy, I can't say what I want to say, but. Are you serious? I mean, how long is this guy going to bang this drum? How long is he going to continuously talk about this? It's just crazy. I mean, this guy is, how much of a narcissist do you have to be to still be whining about a defeat from 6 years ago? And I'm putting together some stuff today because I want to talk about this. The only proof that you could find that there was any cheating that actually took place in the 2020 election is by the Republicans. Mm-hmm. We had a phone call to Georgia. We had Rudy Giuliani calling Arizona saying, well, we have a lot of theories. We just don't have any proof. I mean, that right there, doesn't that speak volumes about the whole thing? The fake electors. I mean,
and the ones that have been convicted have been Republicans.
Yeah. It's just like, I mean, seriously, but this is the drum he has to be in order to keep his, his people, his mass, his cult motivated to, to support him, because he knows he's a disaster on all the other fronts, Yeah. I mean, and the grifting that this guy does, it's unbelievable. So yeah, whatever. This is nothing different. This is nothing new. I mean, this is just the same old crap that this guy has spewed out of his mouth, it's just,
and he's doing it obviously once again as another distraction. But this is where, they used up Tulsi Gabbard. They got her to be, sort of the shadow person when they went in and grabbed voting information. And that was yet another distraction. But, you know, some of the Dems are stepping up in this space and reminding people to not fall asleep on this. And then I think it was Representative Garcia out of California that that said, pay attention, even though it's a distraction and it's craziness. Like you just said, Kurt, people should pay attention because it is something that, you know, we look away, then we're wondering why.
He's doing more harm to our election system in this country than any man has ever done. He has totally done more harm than anyone. And you know, again, Richard, I've said this before, and you know how I feel about this. I put a lot of the blame on the Democratic Party because on January 21st, we didn't arrest him and throw him in jail and indict him and charge him for treason.
When he was a private citizen. Yeah, I mean.
We failed. We failed ourselves. So
Yeah.
this is what we've been left to deal with, because all of these other things that you talk about, and I agree with you, the voting and all of this, none of this would have took place if we had done what we should have done.
And then we had the
guarantee you
power
that
to
our
do it.
forefathers were sitting there looking at us doing, what are you guys doing? Why, this is what we didn't want, and this is what we were trying to prevent from happening, and you're allowing him to continue. So
Yeah, I go back and I say to myself, and I say it on the air, you know, there's a couple things that I wish had been done differently in January or February of 2021. But you know, part of it goes back in some ways to something that Professor Glaude alluded to about the country's lie to itself about how perfect it is, and how right it is, and how good it is, and how much of a savior it is. And the country is, and it created that. And then when things happen,
and who we are,
and who we are, and then when things happen, Kurt, the lie kind of gets in the way of getting things done. So yeah, where am I going with this? Decorum, the decorum of you don't mess with the former president, and you don't, all that stuff. I think, and the quote words like institutionalists and blah. Well, some of our institutions are jacked up. Just be honest, they just are, to use a word. And so I think that mindset got in the way. I'm not in his mind, but I think that mindset got in the way of President Biden and to some extent Kamala Harris and the other institutionalists that ironically have law degrees. And so, you know, they probably got in their own way out of fear of being perceived as not doing the American thing, which was to let the former president alone. And there's nothing in law, there's nothing written about that, but, you know, they bought into it. And that's where the Democratic Party missed the opportunity to shut this garbage down, in my opinion, in the first 100 days, if you will, of President Biden's administration. I know you and I will get criticism for that. I don't care. But
immediately.
I use first 100 days because that's oftentimes one of the measuring sticks.
Yeah,
but Not to belabor what you're saying. I agree with you there. So one more thing I want to.
But that's who we are. That is who we are. So.
Yeah, and that's kind of. I mean, you and Professor Glaude is saying a similar thing about, you know, we fall into that, we fall asleep into that mode, and then we don't do the things that we need to do to actually achieve the things that we say we are as a country. So my hope is the next time the Democrats are in power, that they bring the messaging of you and me and the sledgehammers that you and I have in the trunk of the car to the fight. So, Kurt, let me ask you this question about Maine, and I'm not talking about Plattner, but I'm talking about, obviously there were two in the past week. This is really a question about ICE, but it's also about Maine. In the past week, there's been two more murders of folks by ICE, one in Texas and one in Maine. And the one in Maine, I think, both of them are just disgusting and shameful. However, the one in Maine has some political implications as it relates to Susan Collins, because she checked the box, yes, for more funding in that $70 billion that went to ICE. And then you turn around and somebody in her own state gets killed by ICE. Give us your thoughts there.
Oh man, ICE is out of control. There are a bunch of thugs that are untrained. You know, they're Dollar General junkies who go to McDonald's every day to eat their, you know, lunch and stuff. They're you know, I mean, I'm using some weird things, but you know, they're just, my point is, these are unqualified, untrained, you know, individuals out there who are acting like a modern day Gestapo, and that's who they are. no law enforcement agency, I don't care who it is on the local, state, national level, should be awarded the fact of being the judge, jury, and executioner. Period. That is not who we are in this country, yet that is what ICE is. And I do not want to hear any of this, well, you should comply, you shouldn't run, and all this. You know, people, when I see comments like that, people are just, they're ignorant to the fact. They're racist, first off, when they say stuff like that, because that's what this is all about. Okay, this is all about the racism that is embedded in our country, and it has always been, and it's coming to the forefront once again. It's always been there, but now it's starting to peak again. So when you have an individual who is here legally, following our system, following the laws that are in place, who has a Social Security card, who has a child who was born in this country, and has thugs walk up to him in masks and firearms, and he's afraid. That's why he wasn't trying to get away because he's a criminal. He was feared for his life, and justifiably so, because look what happened. Mm-hmm. We have to also keep in mind about the optics that are happening. Okay, they are shooting these people through the front windows. Okay, this kid in Maine and Renee, you know, was both front and side windows. They are not. Law enforcement is trained not to get in front of an automobile. Why do you think cops walk? If that wasn't a concern of law enforcement, cops would pull in front of the car, right, and walk forward to the car. But they don't do that.
They pull in behind and they walk
because
up.
They don't. Yes, and we've got to pay attention. So that shows you right there that the training is not here. I mean, it's not there. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's sad that this is going on in our country and that people are supporting this. Yeah. People are, I mean, I make content and I put it on there, and you wouldn't believe some of the comments.
Oh, yes, I would. Believe me. I believe them.
It's just crazy.
And I see some of the stuff that, that you get back. Believe me. Last question, and we wrap up.
And, you know, and
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
All right, last question. And it's a little bit of a fun one, but who you got in the World Cup? Because if Spain is now one of the two teams, and it's going to be between England and Argentina. You and me, who are in.
Well, it ain't Argentina, okay? It's. I'm not rooting for Argentina.
Don't cry
for
me
that right now.
Okay, Ava Perón.
That ain't happening.
Oh man. So England and Spain. If it's England, then who you got?
Yeah. I mean, I really don't.
You're gonna be Switzerland.
I was rooting for Switzerland and Norway, so you know, I'm not very good at soccer because every team I've watched and every game I've watched, and I'm like, okay, I'm for them. They
lose.
So you know,
I'm in the same bucket as you are, man. I hear you. Yeah, Kurt Mullen, y'all, from Hoosier Blue 63. Check out everything he does. Thanks for being with us, my man. Good to see you as always. Have a great rest of the week.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you do the same.
All right.
Stay cool today, man.
Yeah, you too. Stay hydrated. All right, guys, 773-763-9278 is the number. It's been great hanging out with Kurt. We're going to take a quick break. We're listening to Choose Views on WCPT AM 820 in Chicago and WARR 1520 AM, 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota. I'm Richard Chu. When we come back, we'll be talking with Mandela Barnes, former lieutenant governor, and now running for governor in the great state of Wisconsin. I'm Richard Chu. We'll be right back. All right, guys, welcome back to Choose Views. I'm Richard Chu. If you're just tuning in, thanks to Kurt Mullen for hanging out with us, and Eddie Glaude, Professor Eddie Glaude as well. And with us this morning also, someone that's been with us before. I think he was on Henry during Black History Month. So we had a lot of conversation around Black history is American History 365. And who is that? Former Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin and 2026 candidate for governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes. Good morning, sir, and welcome back to Choose Views.
Hey, good morning. Really excited to be back here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here too. I get a lot of text messages from our listeners, and they're varied and they're all over the map. But then they're sometimes very, very specific about the topic of the day. And you running, since we talked back in February, a lot's happened in the country since then. I don't think the war had started when you were on last time, but here we are. And governors, I talk about this in the States, the governors right now and the AGs in many ways are holding the line on a lot of what the federal government is doing to harm the country, just calling it as it is. How are you seeing that in your role now as someone that's running for governor of Wisconsin?
Well, Congress isn't doing it. Speaker Johnson isn't doing it. Jonathan Thune isn't doing it. So the only backstop we have are governors across the United States, more specifically Democratic governors.
Thank you.
And to that point, and so to that point, we obviously can't both sides that because it's not a both sides thing. But Democratic governors are holding the line. It is the last line of defense, especially in swing states. When you look at election protection and election integrity, this is going to be paramount going into 2028. If there was ever a year where a wave was necessary, it would be 2026, because with a very unpopular president, categorically unpopular, whoever succeeds him as the Republican nominee for president is going to try to attempt the dirtiest tricks in the books. They are already trying to do so through the SAVE Act. They're trying to do that through legislation to prevent people from voting. So we need to ensure that we have the strongest guardrails in place in states all across America, and we can actually lead by example. We can hold rogue ICE agents accountable. We can show up and be able to ensure that there is a buffer between the federal administration, between the White House and communities that have been disproportionately impacted. That's what this race is about.
What are you finding and hearing from voters? If we go back to when you were on earlier in the year, up until now, what have been some of the experiences, some of the things that you were surprised to hear from people, some of the things that you've learned, and how you're taking that forward to improve and make yourself even a better candidate for this seat?
Well, I can't tell you how many conversations we've had over these last 7.5 months. You do hear the same things about affordability and about healthcare. Never been in a single room where the topic of data centers has not come up, and also just the issue of election protection. Most importantly, how are we going to be, again, that buffer between the Trump administration and everything that they are trying to do to damage this country? So to that point, when it comes to myself and my evolution as a candidate, that always happens through each and every conversation. All of them are important. You learn something different. It's almost like a LLM model where you are hearing these stories directly from people, and one, it does impact your perspective on things. Sometimes you learn something new. Sometimes it's just reinforcement of something you've already put forward, something you preached before. But at the same time, it just makes you more urgent. And I know that my sense of urgency, which has always been there, has increased even more because of the fact that people have been let down for so long and feel like things haven't changed and feel like things won't change. And they want a leader who's going to stand up and fight. And there's not a single person running on either side of the aisle that has my track record of standing up and fighting, putting myself in the most difficult and challenging circumstances, fighting on behalf of all the people of the state of Wisconsin.
One of the things that has been, for lack of better words, pushback from those that are running against you, or that you're running, however you want to put it, it's a crowded field. We got a crowded mayor's race here in Chicago, and it's coming from people who are Democrats. So that's a reality of politics sometimes. But in your case, you decided to not let the moment miss when you said, I'm going to ramp up the conversation here. And recently you started speaking a little bit, I'll say from the bottom of your shoes when it comes to what other candidates don't bring to the table. And that Many of them are not as equipped, and many of them are just in the race because they're well funded to be in this race. So little bit of combination there. You raise the temperature a little bit. You've been critical of PAC money. You've been critical of people that are in the race because of that. How does that sit with you now?
Well, I can tell you we've never taken a dime of corporate PAC money, and I'm going to continue to show up. I'm no stranger to holding my own party accountable, and I'm no stranger to taking on the establishment. It's, in fact, how I got into electoral politics. My very first race was against a Democratic incumbent who'd been there for 8 years. I had disagreements with the way I felt that we were being represented. So I stepped up and I ran, and I still have that same exact spirit. And when it comes to making things better for people, my direct and very personal experience with some of the unfortunate realities in communities, being born and raised in the city of Milwaukee, being born in the most challenged zip code in our entire state, one of the most challenged zip codes in the entire country. I know firsthand what people are going through. This affordability crisis, as it is bubbling up to the top, is not new, as you know. This has been people's life experience for generations. And now the conversation is starting to finally receive a bit of due diligence, but I'll call it overdue diligence, because we've seen what the impact of poverty, of joblessness, of hopelessness has meant for communities all across this state and all across the country. And being in the fight to help shift that dynamic for so long, I guess you can consider it partly a win, because politically it's a part of the conversation now. But it can't go away just because a handful of people have, seen their situation remedied. And that's usually what happens after the 2008 financial crisis. It felt like once the stock market rebounded, then people claimed economic victory, totally dismissing and disregarding the lives of people who don't even have enough money to invest in the stock market, to be able to invest. And it's been this projection, this proclamation that things have been going well economically because of the stock market. But we know the reality. We know that people have been continuing to struggle to put groceries on the table, have struggled to afford health care, have been in situations where the only option is underfunded schools and communities. And we have to tax the wealthy. We have to hold corporations. We have to hold big tech accountable for their mishandling of communities, for their mishandling of the lives of so many people all across this particular state and all across the country.
One of the things, Lieutenant Governor, that I want to say to you is we when you talk about not only the mishandling, but when you talk about the underinvestment or the disinvestment, it's pretty clear to me that when a black politician speaks to that it's missed, that it's not just focused on remedying what's been disinvested in terms of black communities or other communities of color. It's actually, as those communities of color are strengthened, all the communities are strengthened. And that includes rural white communities, which Wisconsin has a significant number of. So
turns out we have.
Say that again.
It turns out we have a few.
Yeah. But so the disinvestment conversation, oftentimes when a black politician talks about it, it's perceived as we're only looking to help black folks or other people of color, when in fact that's completely wrong. It's everybody under that tent. Mayor Johnson's running into that. I mean, and I use that because it's true. Mayor Johnson's running into that here. Mayor Scott's running into it in Baltimore, and other black politicians are running into that. When we speak about disinvestment or underinvestment, it's perceived the wrong way. How do we, I don't want to say correct that, but how do we make that less misread or misunderstood?
So when you bring up the material living conditions of people in this state, unfortunately, there is a disproportionate impact that falls on racial lines. We've had one of the highest rates of unemployment, highest rates of poverty, health outcomes, educational outcomes, you name it. The list goes on. Impact of environmental hazards as well. And the idea that they only exist in Black communities is just so not true. You mentioned rural communities all across Wisconsin because they are experiencing this as well. And this is about communities that have been completely left behind. When I talk about my own personal story, I bring up the factory job that my grandfather had, after his service during World War II. And that factory where he worked, he was able to show up one day effectively, leave 35, 40 years later and retire with some comfort. He was able to create a middle class foundation. No college degree, but he was able to purchase a home. And you think about how hard it is for people with college degrees, advanced degrees to be able to purchase their first home in this day and age. Now, I say all that to say that, that factory doesn't exist anymore. And it's not as if people got tired of working. It's because corporations and the executives running them felt that they can make more money for themselves by sending our good paying jobs to other countries. And our communities still haven't rebounded. But this is also the story in rural Wisconsin as well. There are shuttered factories and there are family farms that are going away because corporate interests are showing up and they are ruling the day. And these are the issues of corporate greed that impact communities all across Wisconsin. So when we talk about improving quality of life for Black people in Wisconsin, the remedy, the solution that would improve quality of life also helps out people in rural Wisconsin. The lack of access to healthcare in inner city Milwaukee is an issue that is felt in rural communities who don't have health access because these hospitals and clinics are too few and far in between. So I'm glad you brought that up because the more we have these conversations, I guess I could have brought that part up earlier. The more because the more we have these conversations, the more I get to talk about how there's so much more in common that we have, whether it's between cities and more rural areas, or the more things we have in common along racial lines, because we've all been dealt a bad hand, we've all been set back, we've all been left behind.
Yeah, that's such a great way of putting it. And I knew I pay attention to what you've been talking about, so I knew that you had some unique and weathered experience there. Lieutenant Governor, let's take a quick break. The number is 773-763-9278. You're listening to Choose Views on WCPT, AM 820 in Chicago, and WARR 1520 AM and 103.5 FM from Warren County, North Carolina, and the great state of Minnesota's AM 950, the Progressive Voice. We'll be right back. Guys, welcome back to Choose Views. I'm Richard Chu. If you're just tuning in, and we are talking to former Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, who is running for that CEO seat of the state. Thanks for being with us this morning. I know that you've been rightfully critical of folks in the Democratic Party that are running for the seat, but the guy that's going to be Trump's rubber stamp is ultimately going to be whoever you or whomever ends up winning the primary is going to have to go after. And he's got some exposure, I guess you could say. Let's talk a little bit about what you see in Tom Tiffany and how he's just another rubber stamp for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
He's no stranger to me. We were both in the legislature together, so I do know him pretty well. And the funny part about the rubber stamp part is, he's legitimately been this way before Donald Trump. He was one of the people who ushered in all this madness, all this hyper-partisan, radical, right-wing ideologue agenda Republicans. He's been this way. But now that Donald Trump is president, he has spent his entire time in Congress doing the bidding of the president versus what the people of the district he represents have been calling him to do. He voted against extending the Affordable Care Act tax credits. He's a person who said that if you are at threat of artificial intelligence taking your job, you should just get a new job. He has praised tariffs, and he thinks that they are a good thing, which means that he has not had a single conversation with a small business owner or a family farmer, because they will tell you otherwise, and they will tell you so quickly. He's a person who continues to deny the 2020 election results. And this is a person who's looking to run our state. and if given the opportunity, he would absolutely overturn an election result that he didn't like. And so when you say he's exposed, more than exposed, he's exposing himself. He's telling us very well who he is, who he has been, and who he will be. And it's not enough to just run against how awful he is. And I've been very clear that the path to victory is leading with our values and leading with our vision, showing up for people all across Wisconsin. And that vision has to be bold. That vision has to be one that changes or that takes us from where we are now to where we need to be, which is so much further into the future. We have to catch up to our Midwestern neighbors on a lot of things like raising the minimum wage, legalizing marijuana, also expanding healthcare. And if people don't know what they are voting for when they're showing up to vote for Democrats, then that's when you get people staying at home in a critical election. We can't afford for a single eligible voter to sit this one out.
How are you reaching out to those? Because, I mean, we know on a national level, in 2024, that some 80 plus million people stayed at home, didn't vote. And we know that a lot of those were Midwestern voters, unfortunately, and certainly in the swing states. And so that's why the numbers, if we were to believe them, ended up the way that they did. So that's a critical piece right there, Lieutenant Governor. What do we have to do? What can we do to get those folks, and we're talking about state because you're running for governor, to get those folks off the sidelines that said, nah, I'm just not going to do anything?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because for the last few years, I should say prior to launching this campaign, I've been leading an organization called Power to the Polls. And Power to the Polls is focused on engaging new and infrequent voters, primarily Black voters that fall into this mix. This was technically a statewide operation, which it was, but we operated heavily on the ground in population centers from Kenosha all the way up to Green Bay. And through that work, Milwaukee ended up having the highest voter turnout, the 50 largest cities in 2024.
Wow.
And it wasn't one of those, get out the vote programs that lasted for a month. This was a year-round program and steadily engaged communities, talking to people about what was important, but most importantly, asking questions and talking about why people did not show up to vote. And, it was the largest independent voter mobilization effort ever in the state. It was the largest Black voter outreach program ever in the state. And very proud of the work that we did because it showed results. Even the former Democratic Party chair, Ben Wickler, he would show up on our Zoom meetings to help us raise money. The idea, and we were asking money from the same people. So, for him to, show up with that level of support just speaks to the efficacy of the work that was taking place. So to that point, the model is there for getting people out to vote. I got my start as an organizer. I still see myself as an organizer. And there's organizing that needs to be done. There's organizing that is happening, not just throughout the course of this campaign, but we will have to organize post-election as well to see an agenda through, especially depending on what the legislature looks like.
Yeah, so that I don't want to leave that. I don't want to forget that. There's a name that comes to mind that when you were just talking about the power of the vote and getting people involved. Lavora Barnes in Michigan, who talks and works real hard at getting people involved, but she says that we got to give young folks something to do, something to be a part of, because that's how we get younger voters involved and keep them involved. And I think that's the part there, the keep involved, which is what you kind of alluded to, or you stated it. We have to do is keep people involved, not just during the election cycle, whatever that may be on a state basis or on a federal level. How do you see that, and what do you want to see us do more of collectively to keep people involved?
So keeping people involved, I think that stems from, or I think that can come as a result of seeing campaign promises through. The reason people get involved is because they take on an issue. They see an issue that's important to them, and they want to help support the person that's going to push forward and be bold on that issue and provide a solution. And so you look at the campaign as step one. And for those folks who are just getting involved, you look at seeing policy through as step two. And that's the important thing to try to keep people involved and engaged with. Also takes, regular communication, because people feel as if, nothing is happening after the campaign cycle. And I can tell you, whether it's a politician you like or a politician you don't like, something is happening post-election. And so to make sure that it is the thing you want to see happen, that's why it's important to get involved. And, what I've also done is, there have been a number of people who've worked with me before who ended up running for office. And, that is another way to keep people engaged at a different level. And I think that's important too, that people see potentially running for office as a possibility for them when they may have never even considered doing something like that.
Do you think that our national Democratic Party is allocating money in the right direction in terms of some of the state elections and its participation in that process?
So from what I heard, I have not been made aware that they are. I know there was a lot of consternation about issues of funding. That was the conversation earlier this year about which direction the DNC was headed in. There was some consternation about how much money was going to swing states versus how much money went to places like Guam, which, obviously is a completely different story. So I'm not sure if that's been fixed yet. It could have been, and I just don't know. And so I can't necessarily speak to it.
Got it.
I hope that we realize that investing in Wisconsin would be a lot more important.
It's a very prudent thing to do, and it gets us. It allows us to kind of plug some of the state holes or the holes that are in certain states to make sure that state legislatures are in check. And that leads to my last question before we wrap up. How the Wisconsin State Legislature, give us your quick assessment of where that is and what's got to change for you to be able to be successful as governor.
Well, since I got elected to the legislature in 2012 until present day, the state legislature has been a place where good ideas have gone to die. Yeah. It's been a place that has held us back from progress. It's been a place that has fought Governor Evers every step of the way when it comes to common sense proposals and policy, when it comes to the things that have been overwhelmingly supported by people all across Wisconsin, all across the political spectrum, be it the issues that I mentioned before, raising wages, expanding healthcare, legalizing marijuana, protecting the environment, standing up to data centers and big tech, all these things that should have happened, the legislature has gotten in the way. And so this is a year where we do have an opportunity to, for sure, take back the Senate. Just mathematically, there are new maps, and mathematically, if you win statewide, a majority in the state Senate will come with that. It'll be a dogfight in the state assembly, but in a year like this, where frustration is at an all-time high, where disappointment is at its peak, I do believe we can also flip the state house as well and bring both the assembly and the Senate along with a victory in November, which will completely change the game and give us a governing opportunity we have not had in 15 years. And we will be as urgent as we possibly can. We will drive the car like we stole it. We will show up on the one, getting to work for people across the state of Wisconsin.
That is good to hear, because as we know, when the state legislature, when we have the trifecta, no matter what anybody wants to say about us, we get stuff done in any state in the country. So I'm happy to hear that. We have to have you back on. I love the work that you're doing, and keep the fight up. Real quick, how can folks find you? How can they get involved if they want to get involved in your campaign?
Hey, I really appreciate it and do look forward to coming back. People can find me across all social media platforms at The Other Mandela. You can check out the website, mandelabarnes.com, to stay involved, stay engaged. If you got a couple coins to drop our way, we'd greatly appreciate it. This is a grassroots campaign. We've been that way, and we're going to stay that way.
Fantastic. Lieutenant Governor, thanks for being with us this morning. You're always welcome here. We look forward to having you back. And in the meantime, stay cool, because Upper Midwest has got our heat and our humidity right now. So be safe out there, okay?
Hey, thanks a lot. You too.
All right. Bye now.
Hey, take care.
All right, guys. Thanks for being with us today. Thanks to Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes. Thanks to Kurt Mellett from Hoosier Blue 63, and to Professor Eddie Glaude for being with us today. And to my road dogs, Henry and Mike, for making sure we stay on the rails. Stay tuned for the Stephanie Miller Show. And remember, guys, take a deep breath and make your life count. We'll see you tomorrow.